It all starts 3 million years ago, when humanity was barely learning how to survive, and somehow, that red-haired bastard was already there. Back then, he was just an ordinary Orlithethecus, riding around on a boar and living for the hunt, but something about him completely broke the natural order. Time kept moving forward, yet he never died. His entire species went extinct, erased from history, but he stayed behind. Era after era passed like nothing, and not a single one ever touched him. Through all that endless time, only one thing ever mattered to him: hunting, brawling, and fighting. That was his joy, his purpose, his entire reason for existing. For more than 3 million years, his body kept evolving through non-stop battles. No magic, no shortcuts, just pure physical strength. Eventually, that obsession turned him into something else entirely, a god. Not just any god, but the #1 god, known as the god of planet Earth in the divine realm of MWW. He was supposed to watch over the planet and keep things balanced, but honestly, he was bored out of his mind. Standing in the sanctuary of the gods, he takes a single step and the entire place shakes. Demons freeze, angels panic, everyone knows trouble is coming. Lucifer, ranked 2nd, is already muttering that this bastard is about to cause problems again. Mu sits on his throne and lets out a sigh. He says he's already fought everyone worth fighting. There's no one left who can stand against him. The last real fight he had was over 1,000 years ago. Turns out being too strong completely ruins the fun. That's when it hits him. Maybe the problem isn't everyone else. Maybe he needs to be weaker. So he comes up with what he believes is a genius plan. If he weakens himself, fights will feel real again, and the easiest way to do that is to take over a fragile human body on Earth. No divine power, no instant healing. Every single fight would actually matter. Mu calls out a name, and the ground trembles as Yang appears. A massive, jacked dragon standing on 2 legs. This isn't just any dragon, he's the supreme god of the sanctuary. His real name is Yan, which literally means dragon, and right now he's terrified. Shaking, he asks if Mu called for him. Mu casually tells him to take care of the sanctuary because he's leaving. That's it. No explanation. Yang completely panics and activates absolute prison, summoning chains that wrap around Mu's body. He demands to know how Mu can just disappear like that when the gathering of the gods is coming soon. What is he supposed to tell them? Mu doesn't even stop walking. He says he doesn't care. That's when Yang breaks down crying, begging him not to go. If the other gods find out Mu vanished, they'll beat him to a pulp. He doesn't even know where Mu's going. Mu snaps the chains like they're made of paper and calmly asks if Yang wants to fight him instead. Instantly, Yang changes his tone and wishes him a safe trip. Now Mu needs a human body, so he listens to the thoughts of every human on Earth. One voice immediately stands out, some kid questioning whether gods even exist, telling them to screw off or send him to another world. Mu decides that's perfect and even throws in a bonus wish. Before leaving, Mu tells Yang to guard his original body and to look after the human he's about to possess. The dragon panics again, warning him that if his body dies while his soul is gone, he'll die for real. Mu isn't worried. He says he'll be back soon. On Earth, a demon crumbles into dust while a boy cheers, celebrating that he finally defeated a king, except it's just in a video game. This is our unlucky protagonist, 17-year-old Lejo. He mutters that living in another world would have been perfect. Then his phone slips, smashes on the floor, and something inside him snaps. Standing at the edge, ready to jump with no regrets, Lejo says goodbye to this cruel world. As he leaps, he shouts that if a god really exists, he can screw off, and if that god is angry, then just send him to another world already. Instead, Lejo slams into the ground, blood spreading beneath him. Then his hand twitches, and he gets back up because the one inside that body now is Mu. On Earth, Mu struggles just to stand, even his hand barely responds. The body is weak, broken, and fragile, but Mu understands something humans don't: involuntary muscles, the heart, the blood vessels, the systems that normally run on autopilot. And after 3 million years of training, Mu can consciously control all of it. He forces his heart to beat again, shifts his blood vessels to stop the bleeding from the inside, and slowly rises to his feet. Looking down at the blood, he thinks it's been thousands of years since he's bled this much. Coming here really was the perfect choice. Now it's time to sort through this kid's memories. But first, he has to go home, and for some reason, Lejo walks home on his hands like a complete idiot. That home turns out to look more like an abandoned prison. After hours of analyzing the memories, Mu realizes the kid only has one relative. People who lived ridiculously far away and didn't care about him at all, which meant the kid was completely alone in this world. His life could only be described as miserable, dirt poor, straight up bankrupt. The only thing he did every day was go to a place called school, and apparently every time he showed up there, someone was always ready to pick a fight with him. Honestly, it was the perfect body. He could just walk in and immediately get into a fight, except the moment he threw a punch, it felt like 5 or 6 muscles in his arm ripped apart at once. Well, that part wasn't entirely fair. The real reason was that he'd walked home on his hands like an idiot earlier. The kid didn't actually have terrible muscles. Still, Mu was excited because muscle pain was something he hadn't felt in millions of years. And wow, I've seen high-ass girls working construction look less stiff than this guy did in combat. The next day at school, everyone was staring at the bloodstains on the floor while Lejo casually strolled in, humming to himself. In class, they were talking about page 56 when he suddenly slammed the door straight into the wall, bounced back, and smacked himself in the face like a complete moron. While he was rubbing his face, the guy from his memories yelled at him, asking what the hell he thought he was doing. From this point on, we'll just call Mu by the name Lejo, since that's what everyone around him uses. With a strange expression, Lejo walked up to the guy and calmly asked if he was the person he was looking for. The guy thought he'd lost his mind, asked where his glasses were, and then suddenly smacked him across the face. He even accused him of selling his glasses just to buy food. Truly broke behavior. Blood dripped down Lejo's face as he stood there doing nothing. That's because Mu had a personal rule when it came to fighting. To him, a fight was only fair if both sides had the will to fight. He always waited for his opponent to make the first real move. This was his way of confirming it. And now as he licked the blood off his face and grinned, he decided the chance had arrived. The guy asked if he'd completely lost his mind for laughing like that. Lejo didn't answer. He just stepped forward and smashed him in the face. Instantly, his entire arm started shaking, and it felt like the bones in his hand had cracked. The teacher rushed in, yelling about what the hell they thought they were doing and demanding they stop fighting in the middle of class. Unfortunately, the teacher's authority meant absolutely nothing. The guy rushed Lejo again without hesitation. Lejo tried to defend himself, and for a second it looked like he was about to activate his third and fourth forms. But nothing happened. This was Earth. No magic, no powers. He took another clean hit to the face while the other guy told him to stop messing around. Lejo muttered that he was running out of options. His arms were basically broken, his legs were useless, and he had zero magic to rely on. So he switched to the most basic fighting method there was. He slammed his head straight into the guy's hand. Since skull bones are way tougher than hand bones, the result was obvious. The hand broke first. The guy screamed in pain, and Lejo immediately saw the opening. Before the guy could even process what happened, Lejo grabbed his arm and smashed his forehead into the guy's stomach, right in the solar plexus. Then, before he could recover, Lejo lifted his head and rammed it straight into the guy's chin, probably wrecking his entire mouth. The guy collapsed to his knees and slammed face first into the floor. All around them, students pulled out their phones to record. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. Just yesterday, Lejo was the one getting beaten up. Today, he destroyed that kid in seconds. That's when Mu remembered what always came after the thrill of battle. The throbbing pain where you were hit, the slimy taste in your mouth, the mix of blood and saliva. All of it was something he loved. This was exactly why he came to Earth. He stepped closer to the guy lying on the ground and actually thanked him. Then he opened his mouth, bit down, and spat out the kid's ear. What the hell, Mike Tyson? This Oralithecus is completely insane, and the worst part is, this was his way of saying thanks. Like, good fight, here's proof I enjoyed it. Among Mu's people, this was considered a mark of strength. It meant you managed to withstand and entertain the strongest being alive. But on Earth, people interpreted it very differently. One student whispered about the fight, while another replied it was just some random bullying incident. Then someone pointed out that it looked like Lejo actually wanted to get bullied, and the loser somehow ended up castrated. Apparently in Korea, when you neuter a cat, you cut a notch in its ear as a mark. Cruel as hell. Meanwhile, the loser was carried off in an ambulance while society's menace waved goodbye from the window, smiling like he was giving thanks. That's when the teacher finally caught up and ordered Lejo straight to the teacher's office. Inside, the teacher slumped into a chair and asked if he'd lost his mind. How could he do something like that to a classmate? He was about to start scolding him when Lejo's face flushed red and he begged the teacher to hit him instead, breathing heavily like a lunatic. The teacher muttered that he didn't even know why he was wasting his time and decided to call Lejo's parents instead. For now, he told him to leave without causing any more trouble. With no other choice, Lejo walked out. Leaving school early just meant going straight back home. No matter how good that fight was, his body was completely wrecked and needed time to recover. It would have been perfect if he could use mana. Call it ki, chakra, nen, whatever. To gods, that energy was what separated them from humans. He remembered worlds where humans became hunters or sorcerers, but Earth had none of it. No mana meant no abilities. He tried casting something anyway. Nothing happened. Looks like he'd have to get used to fighting with nothing but his fists again. If he collapsed into bed, recovery would take forever, so resting was his only option. But at that exact moment, he found himself back inside Mu's original body. He opened his eyes and saw the boy clinging to Yongyong's neck. The real Lejo immediately demanded that Mu give him the dragon. Since Mu was already planning to send him to another world anyway, it wouldn't hurt to grant the wish. Anyone with a dragon would dominate most worlds instantly, but Mu suddenly raised his hand and said someone weird had shown up and grabbed his soul. Lejo was confused, asking what he meant. Mu calmly told him he was about to get exactly what he wished for, a trip to another world. The scene shifted to Lucifer's domain, where he stood in front of a massive gate. A small group approached, but before they could speak, Lucifer said no. Mu said yes, he'd decided and Lucifer needed to open the gate. Lucifer demanded to know why. Mu didn't bother explaining. The bitten ear already said enough. He simply said he decides because he's the strongest, and if Lucifer has a problem, he's welcome to fight. Lucifer immediately realized he had no option. Fighting meant Mu would enjoy it. Refusing meant obedience. In the end, he stepped aside. Mu warned him to move because he'd opened the gate himself. Lucifer tried to stop him, saying interference was forbidden and protected by barriers. Mu shattered the barrier instantly and told Lucifer to stay out of the way. Then Mu grabbed Lejo and told him to jump. The boy asked what it was, and Mu said it was exactly what he wanted, a passage to another world. Lejo tried asking for the dragon one last time, but Mu shut that down immediately. Not a chance. Mu flicks him forward with a single finger and sends him flying straight into the portal. As the kid vanishes, he shouts that he wanted to be overpowered. Mu just shakes his head, thinking the brat really doesn't want to put in any effort at all. He casually waves goodbye to Lucifer and tells him to look after the boy. But Lucifer isn't listening. He's grinding his teeth, shaking with rage. Lucifer wasn't always like this. He originally came from his own domain, the planet Elmary, where he was known as the Demon King, standing at the peak of all living creatures. His arrogance grew endlessly until one day he decided to challenge a being known as a god. He summoned a massive sword and hurled it forward, piercing straight through his opponent's chest. That was the day Lucifer killed a god. In that moment, he stole that god's position and became one himself. After that, Lucifer was hailed as a god above gods. For a long time, he ruled as the absolute master of everything. Invincible, supreme, legendary, unmatched, catastrophic, mythological. Seriously, how many adjectives does one guy need? But all of that glory collapsed the moment Mu appeared. Ever since then, Lucifer has sworn that one day he'll take revenge on that worthless human. Meanwhile, Mu is completely unbothered, casually riding Yongyong back home like nothing happened. Back on Earth, the beaten kid wakes up muttering that Lejo is going to die. All he needs to do is make a call. Maybe Cho Hyun, the jacked guy, always pounding away at a punching bag. Or Kang Chio, or Chong Yong. His phone starts ringing right next to him. Turns out it's the blonde guy. And honestly, that's terrifying. Could the Orlithecus already be running into a monster like that? The blonde picks up the call and casually tells him to talk. The beaten kid asks if he doesn't want a new phone since the screen is cracked. Judging by the grin on the blonde's face, yeah, he definitely wants one. Back at school, the classroom door swings open and the beaten kid walks in. Nobody can believe how badly wrecked he looks. Everyone laughs, saying he always acts tough, but in the end, he got destroyed by that loser and even castrated on top of it. Nobody even remembers his name. He slams his backpack to the floor and asks if anyone else has a problem with him. If so, they can settle it with a fight. That's when a girl steps forward and tells him to sit down, shut up, or leave the classroom. The guy instantly explodes, yelling and grabbing a chair. Great, Yampar 2.0 is about to hit a girl, but before anything happens, a massive teacher walks in. Just look at the size of this guy's forearms. He demands to know why the class president is standing, and she immediately sits down, saying it was nothing. The teacher tells her to meet him after class for a talk. When she asks why, he brushes her off and instead tells her to go check on the student who caused the earlier incident, Lejo, because he's disappeared. He says he's too busy and asks her to handle it. Unlucky for her, she gets stuck dealing with a very strange situation. She knocks on Lejo's door, but when there's no answer, she opens it herself. Inside, she finds him collapsed on the floor with cockroaches crawling everywhere. For a second, she honestly thinks he's dead. Not long after, he's rushed to the hospital and hooked up to an IV, completely unconscious. Then Mu's consciousness returns. He opens his eyes, staring at the ceiling, wondering where the hell he is. This clearly isn't where he fell asleep. He looks down and notices a tube connected to his hand. Something is entering his body, flowing straight into his blood vessels. Even more shocking, he can feel that it's nutrients. Somehow, he has full awareness and control over it. It's not quite magic, but the effect isn't bad at all. For the first time, he's found something on Earth that's actually worthwhile. The class president notices he's awake and asks him to explain what happened. Before he can even begin, she cuts him off, saying she's only there because the teacher told her to help. Lejo realizes she's the one who saved him and asks her to wait a moment because he has a question. She tells him to hurry since she needs to get back to school. Lejo asks the most important thing he can think of. Where can he train his body? She just stares at him, taking in his crooked posture, one eye half shut and the other wide open, and bluntly tells him she knows he doesn't have any money. Next thing you know, they're at Old Man Park. Honestly, the place is in great condition. Pull-up bars, workout equipment, everything he needs. Observing it all, Lejo realizes humanity has evolved a lot compared to 4,000 years ago. Back then, training meant lifting rocks, climbing mountains, or digging holes. Still, he knows he has to be careful. With equipment this advanced, there must be some seriously strong humans around. And right in the middle of training, a rock suddenly smashes into his back. Wait a second, has that bastard already found him? The guy who threw it is shaking with rage, saying it looks like Lejo was trying to hide. Lejo calmly picks up the rock and asks who threw it. The kid proudly says it was him. Before he can finish his sentence, Lejo punches him straight in the face and drops him instantly. Lejo thanks him for the preemptive strike and welcomes him to round 2. The scene then jumps to the annual meeting of the gods in the heavens. Yang is trembling, terrified as he stands there presenting. He explains that since the Lord is currently absent, he'll be handling things for now. That's when Lucifer suddenly calls him out, demanding to know what he thinks he's doing. Yang starts shaking even harder, insisting he's not doing anything. He's just delivering a message before leaving. The message is simple and unchanged. If anyone finds someone worth fighting, send word. That's it. Lucifer slams his fist on the table, furious, asking if they're being mocked. He's sick of this meaningless routine, and now that bastard isn't even bothering to show up. He asks the other gods if they really agree with this nonsense. The room stays silent. Angels, shady-looking gods, and everyone else say nothing. Finally, someone reminds him that these meetings exist to maintain world stability, because unknown entities can appear at any time. Even so, it's disappointing that the one god who actually matters won't even show up for something this important. The one speaking now is the third-ranked god, the Divine Archer. Her name has way too many so's in it, so we're just sticking with 3. Lucifer slams the table again, yelling that the world doesn't exist just to entertain that guy. The entire place could collapse at any moment because of Mu's negligence. And every single time Lucifer tries to clean up his messes, it somehow turns into an even bigger disaster. He brings up the Cyclops of planet A from 1,000 years ago. A void creature called Shabbath took a bite out of the planet, and Mu appeared behind it, struck it again, and smashed everything together instead of fixing the situation. Lucifer knows that if all the gods had joined forces, they could have ended it without destroying the planet. But that bastard insisted on handling it alone. To Lucifer, someone like that doesn't deserve to keep the position of a god. Meanwhile, Yang is just standing there, completely lost. Why does he have to deal with this? All he wanted was for Mu to come back soon. Back at the park, the kid is holding his face, yelling and asking if Lejo has completely lost his mind. He clearly doesn't know who his cousin is. That cousin is a professional boxer, and he's about to beat Lejo to a pulp. Whack Kail, standing off to the side, comments that Lejo's hands are pretty quick and asks what sport he practices. Lejo answers honestly, he doesn't practice any sport. He just fights because he enjoys it. The guy laughs, saying that sounds like some kind of high school syndrome. Still, he decides to test him and throws a clean punch straight at Lejo's nose. The blonde immediately notices something is wrong. Lejo wasn't trying to dodge at all. In fact, he was waiting for the punch to land, just like that bastard from the boxing ring. The only difference is that this one's a complete freak. He's licking the blood again, like always. He never avoids the first hit. The blonde starts trembling as Lejo takes a stance and calmly asks if that's how it's done. He throws a punch, and the blonde thinks copying a stance like that is pathetic. Then suddenly, boom, he gets hit so hard he's dragged across the ground, flying backward, wondering what kind of stone just smashed into him. Lejo asks again if that's how it's done. At the moment of impact, he flexed every muscle in his arm at once. The result is immediate. His entire body erupts in pain, but this freak, this masochistic weirdo, is loving every second of it. The sensation of muscles bursting just from contact was something he'd only felt against a handful of monsters back in heaven. To him, it's pure bliss. Still, if he wants to keep fighting, he needs to protect this body. For now, he applies something called romaines, basically fighting raps, just with an ancient name. One of the guys yells at the blonde, asking what he's waiting for and telling him to finish this kid already. The blonde agrees, steps in, and asks if Lejo really thinks he can win like this. He unleashes a rapid flurry of punches, mocking him for talking big while keeping such a terrible guard. Lejo watches closely. The guy is fast and accurate, but it's all too simple. All he has to do is watch which muscle fibers twitch. From that alone, he knows exactly where the punch is going. The blonde feints toward the stomach, but it's really a hook from the side. Lejo intercepts it with a counter hook straight to the arm. The effect is immediate. The guy staggers back, raising his arm in confusion as pain explodes through it. He starts screaming. Lejo notices the reaction is identical to the last one. They really are brothers. Then another punch lands cleanly on his jaw and he collapses unconscious. The last guy standing has no idea what just happened. Lejo steps closer, asking if it's not time to finish what they started. The guy immediately begs him to back off. That's when Lejo realizes the problem. The guy doesn't have the will to fight anymore, which makes everything pointless. He tells him that if he doesn't want to fight, he should just admit defeat and end it there. The guy tries to speak, but Lejo punches him straight in the nose. He clutches his face, trying again, only to get hit once more. A right hook to the jaw, a punch to the stomach, one more to the chest. His head feels like it's about to burst as he keeps screaming that he surrenders. Lejo doesn't stop. A knee strike follows. Lejo mutters that this guy is incredible, truly tenacious, refusing to admit defeat no matter what. Then he spits out a chunk of the guy's ear and licks his lips, leaving behind another little mark. The guy's head is swollen beyond recognition as he mutters that Lejo is a crazy bastard. Back in his room, which has more cockroaches than furniture, Mu reflects that the fights are fun, but this body breaks way too easily. Just a couple of punches and it's already a mess. If he wants to keep enjoying these fights, he needs to take better care of it. So he decides to head back to heaven and check whether Yang managed to prepare what he asked for, but the moment he tries to teleport, it fails. He can't understand why it isn't working. We then see what happened a few days earlier in the Divine Realm, inside Lucifer's empire. When Mu said goodbye and asked Lucifer to look after the boy, he mounted Yang, who asked how life on Earth was. Mu said it was pretty good, except the body he was using was ridiculously weak. That's why he asked for a magical recovery orb, an item that could only be found on planets overflowing with mana. On Earth, only a handful of items blessed by divine power even exist, and anyone who owns one is treated like a demigod. Mu told Yang to prepare it and said he was leaving. Yang warned him about the gods gathering, but Mu casually reached into his pants, pulled out a letter, handed it over, and said it was his answer. Then he told him to read it to them and said goodbye. Mu returned to Earth and his body collapsed to the ground, but somewhere far away, Lucifer was watching. This was exactly what Lucifer had been waiting for. Mu's body was still there, but he was certain it was empty. And since Mu hadn't even bothered showing up to the gods meeting, there was a good chance he wouldn't be back anytime soon. A once-in-a-thousand-years opportunity had finally appeared. Lucifer didn't hesitate. He activated the taxidermy of life, and a storm of purple arrows rained down on Yang. But Yang noticed instantly, pulled back with a clean retreat maneuver, dodged everything, and stopped mid-air with swagger, demanding to know what Lucifer thought he was doing. Was this a declaration of war against the god of Earth? Lucifer took flight and openly declared that he would strip the Earth's god of his title. Yes, this was a declaration of war. Yang immediately fired a compressed breath attack, but Lucifer casually smacked it aside, redirecting it so it circled the entire planet before exploding behind them. Even then, the divine archer had to raise a massive barrier to protect the other gods. The two stared each other down as Yang shed his polymorph form and transformed into a massive dragon. Lucifer announced that next, he'd deal with Yang's master. In the following moment, Susa muttered that this didn't seem like the right place for conversation. Then she paused. Wait, had Yang already been blasted away? Damn, she thought he'd last longer. She turned to leave, but Lucifer told her to wait and asked whose side she was on. She replied that it didn't matter, she was neutral for now. Lucifer accepted that, saying he just didn't want anyone interfering. If anyone opposed him, they should step forward now and settle it immediately. Yang asked if Lucifer truly believed he could defeat his master. Lucifer laughed, asking if he meant the god who abandoned his own body to possess a weak human. In that instant, Yang realized Lucifer knew the truth. Lucifer said the gods had grown drunk on their power and careless in their vigilance. Still loyal, Yang lashed out with his tail, swearing he wouldn't let Lucifer do as he pleased. But Lucifer vanished, reappeared behind him, sliced off his tail, and said he'd keep him alive for now. He needed Yang to reach Earth. Once there, he'd kill Mu and take control of the world. The dragon trembled in pain. Back on Earth, the guy whose ear Lejo bit off for the second time was shaking in front of his coach, getting chewed out. He didn't even want to fight anymore, but the coach told him to rest. As the kid left, he muttered that if it weren't for that bastard, he wouldn't be in this state. On his way out, he ran into Steel, the #1 fighter in the gym. Steel immediately noticed his arm and asked what happened. The kid remembered that Steel was the strongest in the entire academy. Maybe if it was him, this time it would work. So the excuses started. He claimed kids these days were terrifying, that his younger brother had been bullied, and when he went to talk, a whole gang jumped him. Totally unfair. Steel brushed it off, telling him to be more careful before walking away. The blonde stood there confused. Why didn't his sob story work? Then Steel suddenly stopped and asked for the exact name of the person who beat him up. Back in his room, Mu wondered why he couldn't return to the heavens. Losing control over something so basic could only mean there was a problem with his original body. That didn't make sense. Yang was guarding it, and there weren't many beings capable of defeating him unless all the gods had joined forces. Mu jumped to his feet. This wasn't the time to sit around. Those bastards dared to attack his body instead of challenging him directly, which was even worse. Still, he forced himself to calm down. There was nothing he could do right now, and Yang wasn't an easy opponent anyway. For now, the best option was to train at the park. Since his arms were wrecked, he focused on strengthening the muscles this body had never trained. Every sit-up made his entire body burn. His muscles screamed, and to him, it was pure bliss. He laughed like a madman while the elderly people at the park stared at him in confusion. That's when someone called out to him. He collapsed backward onto the ground as the girl from his class approached, asking why he hadn't been coming to school. Sitting on a bench, he asked what the point of school even was. It wasn't exactly a good place to train the body. She asked why he thought like that. He said it was obvious. He needed to train to get stronger. She pushed further, asking why he wanted strength. He answered honestly. He wanted to fight better because right now he was still too weak to brawl as much as he wanted. He went on for hours, ranting about muscle training, strengthening his arms, improving breathing, and optimizing recovery. Eventually, she got tired of listening and told him that training alone was pointless if he didn't have anyone to fight. He needed to go somewhere people created conflicts for no reason. Exactly like the place she was talking about, school. She told him to show up tomorrow and stop being such a pain, then walked off. As he watched her leave, Mu admitted to himself that maybe she had a point. Those two guys from before were never coming back after that beating. He needed to find someone else. The moment he stood up thinking about it, someone appeared behind him and called his name. Lejo grinned as he saw the punch coming his way. Earth really was the best place in existence. The next chapter shifts to Steel's past. He'd been nothing more than an amateur boxer, and his sister was a talented ballerina with real potential. Her beauty and talent attracted a stalker whose obsession grew until he finally crossed the line and attacked her. Steel arrived just in time and landed the first punch straight to the stalker's jaw, but he stopped the crime too early. Because of that, there was no proper investigation, and before long, the man was free again. This time, his obsession was far worse. When Steel stopped him again, his sister didn't escape unharmed. The stalker slashed her ankles and legs. From that day on, Steel stopped trusting the law. Steel decided to play Batman, walking around with a baton strapped to his back, beating down the city's trash. The problem was, he didn't just stop crimes anymore. He started anticipating them. Before people even thought about acting, they were already on the ground. To him, fighting had turned into judgment. And then Lejo takes a clean hit to the face and gets shoved backward. The punch wasn't even that strong. Steel was clearly testing him, but that didn't matter. Steel threw the first punch, which meant the signal had been given. Lejo had been wondering when he'd get to fight again, and suddenly this guy shows up. Perfect. Steel demands to know why Lejo's been going around beating people up. Was he trying to be some kind of gangster? Lejo answers that he's not a fan of small talk, which immediately ticks Steel off. Fine. Steel charges straight in. A barrage of punches comes flying. Lejo dodges. Steel praises him, then swings his arm to block Lejo's vision and lands a hook from behind the guard. Lejo barely defends it. Steel compliments him again, tells him to endure, then slams a heavy blow into his arm and another into his stomach. Lejo realizes what's happening. This bastard is deliberately targeting his already injured arms. And right as that thought hits, Steel comes in from behind and cracks him in the ribs, sending him staggering. Steel comments that Lejo probably can't even use his arm anymore. When it comes to judgment, there's no such thing as mercy. Lejo's body is trembling, and yet something is very wrong with this kid. He almost looks like he's enjoying it. Steel can't believe it. This lunatic is laughing. At that moment, Lejo understands the truth. There's no way he can defeat this guy, not right now, but he can't throw away this chance to fight. He has to stay cautious, calm, and stop smiling so much. Even Mu had been defeated before. Still, he finds a way to enjoy it. At the same time, he also wants to win. In moments like this, he suppresses his emotions and carefully analyzes his opponent. Steel swings again. Lejo grabs onto the cloth of his clothes, pulling just enough to make the punch miss. Instantly, he slips to the side and counters with a short sequence. The more Mu thought during a fight, the stronger he became. He keeps suppressing his emotions, but every time he gets hit, the enjoyment leaks out anyway, and that only makes Steel angrier. Steel rushes in, yelling that this idiot must think the fight is a game. Lejo sidesteps, steps back, plants his foot, and throws a handful of sand straight into Steel's face. Steel spits and snaps that only criminals use dirty tricks. That's when Lejo turns again with that crazy look, asking why Steel is taking so long to attack. Come on already! That completely fuels Steel's rage. He charges in and hammers a blow toward Lejo's face, but now Lejo goes full boxer, slipping just out of range. In the next second, Steel is already at his back. Lejo barely ducks under his chin, genuinely impressed by the bastard's precision. Honest one-on-one combat has existed since ancient times, but the difference now is the ground. Back then, the terrain was unstable, and a single injury could cost you everything. Modern flooring and shoes let fighters go all out without thinking about where they step. Lejo keeps dodging until Steel steps on a small rock without noticing. In that split second, Lejo seizes the opening and swings for his face, but his arm doesn't respond, so instead, he drives his elbow in. It doesn't do much damage, but it shatters Steel's glasses. Blood starts running down his head. Steel isn't amused in the slightest. He slams the baton down onto Lejo's leg, sending him crashing to the ground. Steel asks if Lejo's having fun. He's sure this stupid kid is the type to laugh at people like this, but today the joke ends. He raises the weapon, ready to smash it into Lejo's face. Lejo knows he's lost. He can barely even remember the feeling of defeat. The last time was 4,000 years ago. Then suddenly, something smashes into Steel's head. He stumbles sideways, confused, trying to understand what just happened. Someone calls out Lejo's name. While Steel is distracted, Lejo grabs his jacket, throws it over his body, and bolts. And right then, from behind, someone appears. It's Yang, small, tiny, and battered. Back in the divine realm, Mu's original body is sealed by Lucifer. He's convinced that now Mu has no way to return. The space is completely isolated. A soul can't enter. All that's left is to break through Earth's barrier. This takes us back to earlier, when Yang had been captured. Lucifer told him that once Mu was finished, Yang would be left behind as the new god of Earth. To Lucifer, it was a perfect deal. Yang muttered something under his breath. Lucifer demanded he speak up. The dragon asked whether the barrier was truly isolated, completely impossible to break. Lucifer confirmed it was absolutely impossible for any damage to be done. That's when the chamber lit up. Yang thanked him and detonated his own body in a massive explosion. Lucifer instantly realized the question had been bait. The goal was to destroy the Inter base. Amid the smoke and rubble, a tiny Yang bolted away, shouting that he'd used up all his strength and needed to get back to Earth to reach his master. Lucifer chased after him, yelling for the damned lizard to stop. He hurled his spear with terrifying force, nearly catching the dragon's backside as Yang was shoved into a portal. The little guy shot down from from the sky like a bullet, and of all people, he crashed straight into Steel, right on his head. Now Steel's twisted on the ground, caught on camera, muttering in pure shame about what just happened. Lejo, on the other hand, stays quiet, grinding his teeth in anger and muttering that Lucifer really is a bastard. Then that familiar grin creeps onto his face, like he's already imagining the chaos that's coming. That bastard acted like he didn't want to fight, yet somehow stirred up all this mess, and now it all has to be fixed. Lejo pushes himself up and admits there's no way around it. This body has to get stronger if he wants to fight again, but the moment he moves, his arm twists painfully, reminding him that at this rate, he won't be fighting anytime soon. So he asks Yang Yang if he brought what he asked for. Yang Yang nods confidently, saying he can be trusted. Then he immediately vomits up a massive orb, almost as big as his own head. It's a dragon's blood stone infused with powerful healing energy. Yang Yang admits that if he'd known things would get this bad, he would have brought more. Lejo takes the orb and says this one should be enough. The stone activates, and his body begins healing almost instantly, but something feels different. This isn't normal healing. His muscles feel more alive, almost upgraded. Proud of himself, Yang Yang admits he used a bit of his own power to tweak it. The little guy actually put in real effort. Lejo tells him to consume whatever energy is left, but Yang Yang decides to save it in case it's needed later. The scene shifts to another small dragon, Doyle, the one owned by the girl from class. She coos at him, calling him cute as always, wishing she could talk to him all day. Eventually, she sets him back into his little house, says goodbye, and heads off to school. Back in class, the kid who got beaten up has completely changed. He's suddenly gone full nerd. He's decided to turn his life around. Honestly, being a delinquent never suited him anyway. He tells himself it's time to quit that nonsense and focus on studying for real. Then the classroom door opens. Lejo walks in. The kid nearly soils himself. Lejo calmly asks if he wants to fight, while the girl behind him mutters that he finally showed up. Lejo glances to the side and admits she convinced him. He's here now, looking for someone to fight. She looks confused, wondering if he's about to do something weird again. Meanwhile, downstairs, someone asks Steel if he's heard about the second-year kid who got castrated. Apparently, a blonde had been bullying him, but the kid fought back and even bit his ear. The moment Steel hears that, he remembers the blonde whose ear was bitten. No doubt about it, that was him, which means the real bastard wasn't the protagonist after all. Steel turns to leave, saying there's no reason to fight the boy. Meanwhile, Lejo sits there feeling like the day has been a complete waste. Nothing good happened at school. Everyone just stared at the chalkboard, and he didn't even have anyone to spar with. Then he spots Steel ahead. From the shape and distribution of his muscles alone, Lejo instantly recognizes him. He shouts that it's the same guy from before. Steel freezes for half a second, then bolts. He has no idea how this lunatic recognized him when he was wearing a mask, glasses, and a hood. Lejo chases him with that same unsettling grin. Steel ducks into an alley, and Lejo follows, only to find it empty. He was fully ready for a fight, especially now that his body was healed. That's when Yang Yang pops out and says he'll track the guy from yesterday. Since the bastard touched him, all he needs to do is follow the scent. Yang Yang takes off but immediately trips over someone's foot. He looks up and asks what they're staring at. Of course, it's the girl from class. Since she already owns a pet lizard, she instantly falls in love with him. Yang Yang plants his tiny hands on his hips and tells her to step back, warning that he's extremely dangerous. She doesn't care. She grabs him and lifts him up, completely ignoring his threats. He says if he could use magic, he'd get rid of her instantly. She just stares, confused, asking why this lizard is talking. To her, he's ridiculously cute, maybe even cuter than her own pet. Yang Yang wriggles free and scrambles onto Lejo's back, apologizing and saying he got captured because he was too weak. The girl immediately presses Lejo, asking if that little thing is his friend. Lejo glances over and casually says, yeah, you could call them friends. That's when we finally learn her name. Eugene, and right now she's burning with jealousy. Lejo notices it and then casually asks if she wants to keep Yang Yang for a while. Of course, she doesn't refuse. In the blink of an eye, Yang Yang is in her room, hands on his hips, pouting like a tiny brat. Lejo tells her he's hunting someone and that she should take care of Yang Yang for now. She agrees instantly, practically hugging the little dragon. Before leaving, Lejo reminds Yang Yang to return on his own when he passes by again. Yang Yang asks where Lejo is going. Lejo answers that he's going to train. Back in her room, Yang introduces himself as the secretary of the Great Master. Since he's been ordered to cooperate, he'll help her for now. He stretches out his tiny hand. Eugene feels a tug in her heart and taps it with 2 fingers, saying she'll help him too. Yang doesn't really understand when she says she's the class president, so she explains that it means she's basically the leader and ranked number 1. Yang gets excited, saying no wonder the master chose her. Then he pauses. Wait, isn't the master supposed to be the leader? Eugene looks confused and tells him Lejo isn't even ranked that high. Yang explodes, shouting that's impossible. The master is the strongest of all and he refuses to believe otherwise. If she's the class leader, then the master must be the great leader too. That's just how it works. He keeps lecturing her, saying that from now on she has to do her absolute best to make Lejo the strongest. Eugene agrees, but tells him he'll have to come visit her regularly. The little rascal is thrilled. His plan to squeeze information out of her is working perfectly, and in his head, helping her push the master up to rank 1 feels like the smartest move. Deep down, he's certain it won't be long before the master is back at the very top of the world. Meanwhile, Lejo is back at the park, grinding through his daily training. Thanks to the pill, his body has improved drastically. The effect is insane. Muscles that were torn apart before have grown back stronger than ever. Now there's only one question left. Can this body handle something tougher? He slams his fist straight into a steel bar, and somehow his hand comes back completely intact. No pain, no damage. That little orb made a massive difference. He glances behind him, sensing someone, but there's no one there. Looks like that guy isn't showing up today. He decides he'll deal with him tomorrow at school and walks off, leaving behind a steel bar stamped with the imprint of his hand. On his way home, a familiar scent hits him. It's Yang, perched on Eugene's shoulder while she browses through clothing shops. The moment Yang catches Lejo's scent, he waves goodbye, leaps off her shoulder, sprints across the rooftops, and lands right on Lejo's shoulder. He tells him not to worry. He gathered tons of information from her. As they walk, something feels off in a nearby alley. Yang tells him to wait. He's picking up a strong scent coming from that direction. Inside the alley, some so-called upstanding citizen is loudly insisting he's not a criminal. He claims all he did was steal a bike, bastard. And of course, he says this to the one guy who beats people before they even commit crimes. The thief gets slammed into the ground, but in the middle of the beating, someone shows up behind him. When Steele turns around, Yang suddenly points toward a random shop, insisting that's where the bad smell is coming from and that they should go there instead. Lejo knows immediately it's a bluff. The two lock eyes. Steele tells him to wait, saying there must be some kind of misunderstanding. Lejo doesn't care. He charges forward and Steele takes his stance. They close the distance, but instead of striking, they just glare at each other. As always, Lejo waits for the opponent to throw the first punch, while Steele doesn't seem eager to start either. Then suddenly the thief grabs Steele's baton from behind and swings. Steele dodges, and of course the strike flies straight toward Lejo, smashing into his head. Lejo grins instantly, excitedly asking if it actually touched him. Blood trickles down his face. In the very next second, Lejo drives his foot straight into the thief's stomach. Steele circles around, recovers his baton mid-spin, and smashes it across the thief's face. Lejo keeps going. Headbutt, another headbutt, rapid strikes to the chest, a crushing blow to the stomach. The man collapses, screaming for help. Lejo smiles, but the grin fades fast. This is boring. When he first came to Earth, every fight was brutal. His body screamed with every clash, but this kind of one-sided beating is dull. He needs someone on the level of that guy. And speaking of him, that bastard slipped away. The moment the fight started, Steele bolted. Looking back, Steele saw the lunatic grinning ear to ear, clearly enjoying himself. Yang, meanwhile, stood there looking cute and complained that he needed a proper meal. Steele kicked him aside as he ran, leaving the little guy behind. Not long after, Steele arrives home, wondering why that kid enjoys fighting so much. His sister suddenly appears, announcing that the prosecutor has arrived. Earlier that day, she arrested another criminal. This is Kang Hannah, Steele's sister and former ballerina. She brushes past him, telling him not to get in the prosecutor's way. Steele doesn't move. She comments that the boy is tougher than she expected and heads into her room, telling him to make noodles without eggs. Steele notices she doesn't seem to care much anymore about what happened back then, but ever since that day, all he feels during a fight is pure rage. It wasn't always like this. When he first started boxing, things were different. The scene shifts back to school. Yang is perched on Lejo's shoulder, apologizing for being too hungry the day before. Everyone stares, wondering why this kid is casually bringing a dragon to school. Then Lejo spots Eugene, who immediately lights up and happily greets Yang. Lejo asks if she found the information he wanted. She nods and tells him she knows the guy. He goes by the nickname Iljime, a name that basically basically means someone who hits people. He's famous for beating down anyone who messes with him. She asks why Lejo is so obsessed with finding this guy. Did he do something bad? Lejo answers honestly. The guy keeps running away every time, and when he finally catches him, he won't let him escape again. As he says that, the guy is already standing right next to him. Steel leans in close and whispers for him to stay after class, then walks away with his baton. Eugene asks if they know each other, but Lejo just stands there wearing that strange grin. In class, he's practically glowing, even blushing, saying he can't wait for it to end. Yongyong rests on his leg the entire time. Later, Lejo hands Yongyong back to Eugene. The little dragon looks exhausted and nauseous, but she happily accepts him and leaves with a smile. The moment she's gone, Steel appears. Lejo thanks him, saying he's been waiting. Steel tells him to shut up and starts putting on gloves. Lejo wonders if those are Hementes, the ancient protective wraps. Steel asks if he likes fighting. Lejo shakes his head. If Steel thinks he enjoys fighting, he's wrong. What Lejo enjoys is the pain, the shock that runs through his body when he's hit. The muscles scream as he forces them to move. From the past until now, only fighting has made him feel alive. You could say he fights out of necessity. Steel sees the flushed face and the smile and knows Lejo is lying. He reaches into his bag, pulls out another pair of gloves and tosses them. Lejo catches them against his face. Steel tells him to get ready. Lejo slips the gloves on and charges forward, saying he's been dying to fight someone who isn't just a petty thug. Lejo throws the first punch, but Steel dodges, annoyed at how impatient this lunatic is. Then he calms himself. There's no reason to be angry. This fight is exactly why he came here. He takes a step back and frames it like a boxing match in a ring. The body needs to stay relaxed, no tension or everything gets stiff. Lejo rushes in again. Bam! Steel lands a clean right, then follows up with a left combination that sends Lejo staggering backward. Now Steel starts enjoying it. A full rotation of the torso, all that force transferred straight into the fist. This feeling was fun. This was real boxing. Lejo takes the hits and thinks to himself that if it weren't for the pearl he consumed earlier, this would have been dangerous, which of course makes it even more fun. Meanwhile, someone in the next room from the night study group is trembling. Turns out it's not Steel's female friend at all, but a guy. They'd left him a letter and a snack asking why he always fell asleep whenever he came. He stands up, muttering that maybe it's not too late, and heads out. On the stairs, he notices what's happening outside. Heavy, honest blows. Lejo takes a full sequence, then suddenly stretches his leg and plants it straight into Steel's chest. A crushing kick. Steel shouts in frustration, demanding to know what the hell that was. They're supposed to be boxing. Lejo asks what boxing even means. If it's a fight, why limit yourself to just dance? He throws another kick, this one landing square on Steel's forehead. Before Steel can react, a heavy strike crashes into his shoulder. Now Steel is the one getting hammered, wondering how this kid's kicks can be that strong. Then he spots another kick coming toward the back of his leg. If that one lands, he's going down. The kick connects full force and nothing happens. Lejo steps back, dread creeping in. The strengthening effect from the dragon's bloodstone has worn off. Steel notices too and asks if the kid just lost his strength. Steel laughs and Lejo laughs right back. Neither of them move. Both of them realize the other is just as crazy. Someone stands at the doorway watching, muttering that the sight of these two idiots laughing while fighting is pathetic. He despises people like that, but while he looks on in disgust, the two fighters are having the time of their lives. Lejo lifts his leg into a defensive stance, but Steel punches straight into the leg, knocking him off balance, then follows up with a clean shot to the face. Now, Lejo is getting wrecked for real. This flimsy body barely has any muscle. There's no way he can beat someone this well trained. If only he could use a little magic. Just a little. He starts to rise, forming a faint trace of energy in his hand, tightens his fist, and lunges forward. Steel compliments the effort, but blocks it easily, saying that punch is way too light. Then something passes by Steel without him noticing. The next second, he feels a presence behind him. He turns his head, and bam! Something smashes into his chin. Dazed, he stumbles, thinking at least Lejo's punches are weak. But before he can recover, more hits come from behind. He turns again. Headbutt. Straight to the face. Lejo is shocked that this is actually working. Normally, to use mana, you concentrate all the energy into one spot. When you do that, particles in the air, dust, impurities, whatever, get pulled in and burn away, leaving pure mana. But since he doesn't really have proper mana, what he's making are basically unstable air pockets or something like that. No one ever thought he'd fight like this. And honestly, fighting Steel has turned out to be incredibly interesting. Then Lejo lunges in, trying to bite Steel's ear. Steel shoves his face away, yelling if this lunatic is trying to castrate him too. Hell no. He admits defeat on the spot, saying there's no need to cross that line. He covers his face, warning that next time he'll make him pay. Lejo just stands there, licking his lips. Cut to Yang Yang, now wearing a tiny backpack, saying that's enough for today. Eugene tells him to let her know if he needs anything else. Yang Yang thanks her and heads out. On the way, he spots Steel and instantly remembers that this is the bastard who kicked him. Perfect chance for revenge. He drops the backpack and charges, only to get nailed with a punch to the gut that sends him flying. Steel walks off without a second glance, leaving Yang Yang drooling and unconscious until Lejo finds him later. The next day, Lejo shows up at school wearing new clothes. Even Yang Yang has his own backpack now. Yang Yang asks what he thinks of the fresh new look. All of it was thanks to the effort he'd been putting in with Eugene. Steel walks by and asks why the hell Lejo is wearing a uniform on a Saturday. Lejo has no idea what Saturday even is, which only confuses Steel more. Steel calls him over and asks if he really doesn't enjoy fighting. Lejo lies again, saying he only fights out of necessity. Steel doesn't buy it. He tells him to hang out with him for a while. With him around, boredom from lack of fights won't ever be a problem. Lejo smiles instantly, saying Steel really is a good friend, and that he can't wait to find a place where fights never stop. Meanwhile, Yang Yang sits inside the backpack, silently plotting Steel's death. Next chapter, Friday at Guryang school. One of the bathrooms is closed off. Inside, a man leaning against the wall asks how much the kid brought. The exhausted boy says 20,000. The 40-year-old laughs straight in his face, telling him he must be out of his mind. That amount isn't even close to enough. That guy is Yanjo, and the kid standing in front of him is the same one who stole the bike and later got beaten down by the protagonist. The kid says it's all because of Steel. Hearing that, Yanjo slams his fist into the wall and says they're gonna make that bastard pay the price. He tells them to call everyone. They're settling this properly. That was Friday, now it's Saturday. Steel admits that before, he only fought out of anger, but now he feels like he can actually enjoy a good fight. Lejo doesn't get it. He asks why they don't just fight each other instead of running around dealing with random people. Steel tells him to relax. There'll be a rematch soon enough. Right then, they notice a strange cloud of smoke drifting nearby. Steel immediately recognizes it as cigarette smoke and wonders how many packs they'd have to burn for it to be that thick. He already pulls out a mask and glasses, convinced it has to be thugs. When they reach the alley, someone in the back says they should just report that they didn't find anything. Steel steps in and one of the guys instantly slaps him across the face, asking what the hell he's doing there. Was he trying to get his wallet stolen? Steel drops to the ground, and that's when the guys panic, realizing the alley is packed with gang members. There are way more of them than expected. Then Lejo appears behind them, completely calm, waiting for someone to throw the first punch so he can respond. One of the guys grabs his leg and asks if that bastard is with them. Lejo turns around and asks if the guy really just pinched him. Big mistake. Now he doesn't need to hold back. Just like that, the fight is over. Everyone's already sprawled on the ground. Lejo can't believe these guys who act tough around the city are actually this weak. He picks up a wallet from the ground to return it to a girl from his class, but Yang Yang suddenly warns him that more people are coming. It's Yanjo. He got a message that Steel showed up. He grips his baton, trying to stay calm. Lejo, on the other hand, is getting excited. This is perfect. A dirty, chaotic brawl with no rules. Exactly his kind of fight. The punches start flying everywhere. Then bam, Lejo takes a hit to the head and gets slammed into the ground. Yanjo demands to know who this weirdo is, since there was only supposed to be one opponent. Nearby, a kid who saw them fighting in class earlier wonders why his messages aren't being answered. That kid scoffs, saying these guys are pathetic. Did they really have this much free time? But then something catches his eye. His name is H-Jun, and his father was an MMA champion. To H-Jun, his father was always strong, but one day a needle fell nearby, and after that his father kept getting stronger in an unnatural way. He got addicted to that stuff, drunk on it, slowly losing his mind, and that violence didn't stay in the ring. It followed him home. His father started looking less like a man and more like a monster. His mother ran away to escape the abuse, but H-Jun stayed behind to protect his younger brother. He kept watching his father fight, memorizing his movements, learning every technique. Eventually, H-Jun grew to match him in size. Then one day, everything snapped. H-Jun landed his first punch on his father. From that moment on, fighting became the same as surviving. His father screamed, calling him an ungrateful bastard and swearing he'd kill both of them with his bare hands. And somehow it escalated all the way. H-Jun killed him, just like that. He spent a year locked up in juvenile detention. When he got out, he had to work to support himself and his brother. In a life like that, he didn't even have the luxury of getting sick or injured. His body was his livelihood. That's why he despised reckless fighting. People who fought without caring about consequences disgusted him. He swore he'd never be like that. Back in the alley, the red-haired girl turns out to be his younger sister. His name is H-Jun, hers is Daljun. Yeonjo is standing there demanding to know who this kid is, while Yong is yelling for his master to wake up. Suddenly, H-Jun comes from behind and lands a kick right behind Yeonjo's knee, dropping him instantly. Before Yeonjo can react, H-Jun grabs his head and slams it into the ground. Yong panics, calling out to Lejo. Then H-Jun takes a hard kick from behind but keeps moving, charging straight into the rest of the group. He starts beating everyone down. Eventually, it's just him and Steel facing each other. H-Jun says those filthy bastards never should have crossed the line. Steel tells him to wait, but Daljun calls out to her brother. H-Jun hesitates for a split second, realizing he didn't know she was here. That's all the opening Yeonjo needs. He charges. Steel tries to throw a punch, but H-Jun ducks under it, shoves Steel away, grabs his sister, and runs. In the process, her wallet falls to the ground again. H-Jun still has to pass Yeonjo, who's yelling, asking if he's lost his mind. Yeonjo throws a punch that looks like it lands clean, but it wasn't him he hit. Lejo has already stood back up. H-Jun doesn't understand what this kid's problem is, but he ignores him and keeps running. Lejo, meanwhile, is laughing like a maniac, saying this is amazing. Steel tells him to cover his face before he gets spotted, but by the time he looks up, they're already gone. Steel grits his teeth, saying those bastards really messed things up. Later, Steel explains that Yeonjo is one of the well-known delinquents in the area. He controls the north. In the central area, there's Dugain. In the south, Chungo. Together, the three of them form a group called Gdori, the biggest source of trouble around. He keeps explaining extortion, territory, and how bad this group really is. Lejo, completely lost, asks what the hell he's even talking about. What's a delinquent? What's extortion? And what the hell is a Gdori? Steel stares at him and asks if his brain is just there for decoration. That's when Yong pops out of the bag, saying he's had enough and can't hold back anymore. Yong suddenly snaps, calling Steel a bastard and saying he won't let him talk to his master like that. Steel just stares, completely baffled by the talking frog. Lejo shrugs and says it's kind of a friend of his. Steel squints, saying this kid is way too suspicious. He doesn't understand basic things, walks around with a talking creature, and now claims weird stuff. He must be that kind of person. Yong proudly compliments him, saying humans really do have sharp observation skills. He announces that he's a god. Steel asks if he's an alien instead. Of course, Steel laughs it off, saying Yong is way too stupid to be a god. Lejo, meanwhile, doesn't even know what an alien is. Eugene is completely confused about why everyone ended up at her place, but the moment Yong is in her arms, all of that disappears. She tells them they can stay as long as they want. Steel decides to cut things short and says the big guy they fought earlier is their current target, Yeonjo, the delinquent causing trouble everywhere. Lejo remembers the feeling from fighting Yeonjo. The massive difference in their weight, the resistance. It had been ages since he struggled like that. He thinks it'll be a good experience, but he admits that with his current body, it's impossible. He needs much more training. Steel invites him to train at the gym, but Lejo refuses. He's not interested in a place where people only use fists. He wants something more diverse, more natural, and more intense. While he's saying this, Yong is scrolling through something on a phone. He waddles over and asks Lejo to take a look. On a live stream, someone lands a clean punch straight into a kid's solar plexus, knocking him unconscious. The orange-haired streamer announces that's 3 wins in a row, and anyone who dares to challenge them and wins will take home 1 million won. Lejo scrolls down and sees the description. It's Chunghu's challenge. Immediately it clicks. Chunghu, that's one of the names Steel mentioned earlier. Just like that, Lejo has a new target. First Yeonjo, then he'll take down the entire Gdori. Up in the sky, the battle continues. Lucifer is throwing everything he has at the massive sphere surrounding Earth, and yet it's still intact. He can't believe it. That mold used to erase things with a single touch. He shattered entire structures before, so why won't this break now? Back on Earth, Yeonjo is raging. He's pounding on the door of a public restroom, leaving some poor guy inside mid-dump, completely confused. Eventually, Yeonjo storms off. They didn't recover any money, and they didn't catch that damn Steel either. One of his guys says at least he managed to grab a wallet. When Yeonjo takes it, only 3 coins fall out. He asks if the guy wants to die. Then he notices Daljun's card slip out. The moment he sees it, his expression changes. He smiles, saying he's found something useful. The next day, Lejo follows a small map the class president drew for him. A guy walks by with his dog. Lejo calls out, but the man ignores him. The dog, however, catches Young's scent from the backpack and goes completely wild, growling and jumping to bite. Poor Young. He came down from the heavens just to suffer on Earth. He warns that the day he regains magic, that dog is dead. Following the map, Lejo runs into the orange-haired girl from the video. She's rejecting challengers left and right. She notices his uniform and asks if he's from a place called Beduli. Lejo has no idea what she's talking about. Young whispers that it must be some group name and tells him to just say it, so he does. She asks about his experience. Lejo freezes. She explains he needs to state what kind of fighter he is. Street fighter? Boxer? Martial artist? Lejo stands there counting in his head, then blurts out that he has 3 million years of fighting experience. The guys behind him burst out laughing, but the girl smiles and says it sounds fun. Clearly, she's not all there either. The entry fee is 50,000 won. Young sneaks up and drops cash into Lejo's hand. Turns out he stole it. Back at home, Eugene is asking her mom where her wallet went. Surprise. It's already emptied in Lejo's bag. The total comes up short at 46,000, but the girl waves it off and says she'll let it slide this time. As they walk in, Lejo notices a guy in a green hoodie nearby. As always, he reads the muscle structure and realizes the guy is well trained. That's the same one from yesterday's video. Then right on cue, a mummy-looking giant with a shredded six-pack steps forward, towering over everyone. Her partner introduces her as the champion with 3 consecutive wins. In the middle of the announcement, Lejo steps forward, fist already raised. Since both sides agreed to fight, he doesn't need to wait for a preemptive strike. The girl immediately blocks him, asking what he thinks he's doing. He has to watch the livestream rules first. She explains this is a tournament. He can't just fight whenever he wants. A match already finished, and now it's his turn in the 4th bout. He's announced as the self-proclaimed fighter with 3 million years of experience. His opponent is the martial arts master known as the Golden Disciple. People start placing bets. Shockingly, some even put their money on Lejo. And right then, Young peeks out of the backpack and spots that filthy dog from earlier, standing right there in the crowd. Young remembers instantly. That's the bastard that bit him. He launches forward and lands right next to Lejo. Lejo doesn't even understand why Young is doing this, but the little creature announces that he's participating too. At the same time, the dog runs over to the opposing fighter's side. The streamer girl is ecstatic. This is insane. A fight with pets included. The self-proclaimed 3 million year fighter versus the international martial arts student, and Young versus Cerberus. The crowd is confused though. Why is one guy's pet a winged lizard with horns? But like everything else in this world, they collectively decide not to question it. The girl declares the match is about to begin. The international student asks if Lejo is familiar with a martial art called Sanghangguan, a terrifying style that mimics animal movements in combat, practically impossible to survive against. He lunges forward, shouting that this is the feline technique, only to eat a cannon-like punch straight to the stomach. His face twists in agony as he collapses. Lejo looks completely unimpressed. Just because you copy an animal's movements doesn't mean you're actually an animal. There's nothing special about it. The guy forces himself back up, hurting all over, but now he understands. With just one punch, he's realized the wall standing in front of him. He has no choice but to use the technique his master warned him about. The absolute last resort, extremely dangerous, something he was never supposed to show. He drops to all fours, hands on the ground, and Lejo just stares, confused. Meanwhile, the pet fight finally starts. Honestly, it's hard to tell if Young is already done for or if it hasn't even begun. The Chihuahua makes the first move, darting left and right with weird footwork. The girl even comments that it looks like a ninja dog using clone technique. Young shouts that the middle one is real. Surprise, it wasn't. Cerberus jukes sideways and sinks his teeth into Young's neck. The announcer calls it a perfect feint with a clean follow-up. The crowd starts paying more attention to the human fight again. The martial artist charges on all fours and people burst out laughing. He's literally fighting like a beast. Even his own master is watching, remembering how he warned the kid never to use this technique in public because it would be humiliating. Lejo watches carefully. Since the guy is low to the ground, the attack should come from below, but suddenly the guy leaps upward and slams a tiger-like palm straight into Lejo's face. What the hell? If that had been a real beast, he would have died on the spot. The attacks keep coming. Cat strikes, crane movements, even a horse kick. The crowd is stunned. No one's ever seen a human pull off quadruped-style combat this cleanly. It's almost impossible to predict, and Lejo absolutely loves it. He glances at the chihuahua and figures it out. Treat him like any other four-legged animal and everything makes sense. When the guy lunges again, Lejo crouches, activates his legs, and launches straight upward, vanishing from view. Before the guy can react, Lejo comes crashing down from above, stomping his head straight into the ground. He announces that the weakness of quadrupeds will always be attacks from above. People who bet on the other fighter cry out in despair. Lejo looks around for Yang Yang and sees the poor little dragon completely wiped out. Seriously, why is he always so weak? Cerberus stands there staring him down, but then suddenly flips onto his back. That ability kicks in. Strong against the weak, weak against the strong. With that, both the master and his fighter are declared losers. Lejo wins the match. People in the crowd start Googling where to adopt winged lizards. The fights continue until match number 6, the one that decides the second finalist. Will it be the self-proclaimed 3 million year fighter who beat Sanghung Guan, or the boxer? And then he shows up, Guak Cheetle. Everyone's shocked. They thought that guy retired. Apparently Lejo has 1 win and 1 loss against him. Honestly, no one remembers Lejo ever losing, but that's what they say. Lejo looks excited. He remembers this fool collapsing in agony every time he got hit in the face. The blonde, on the other hand, thinks he has a chance. All he has to do is keep his guard up. They charge at each other. Lejo throws a punch so hard his hand explodes in pain. Turns out he punched straight into the guy's cast. The blonde calls him an idiot. That cast exists because of him. Lejo is writhing in pain, which to him means he feels alive. The blonde realizes again that this guy is insanely dangerous. The plan was to jab a bit, then finish with a kick. There's no way this idiot would expect that. But Lejo notices the muscle fibers activating in his leg. The kick comes and he blocks it exactly the same way Steel blocked his before. The blonde loses balance and Lejo smacks him clean on the chin. The guy drops. Lejo immediately moves in to bite him again. The crowd groans. Not again. Did he really leave another mark? And just like that, we reach the final. The shredded mummy with the insane abs versus the 3 million year fighter. 1 million won on the line. Before the introductions even finish, Lejo charges in and gets clipped on the side of the head. He barely manages to defend. That kick was fast, really fast. He presses forward as she fights with pure swagger, backing away with her hands in her pockets like that kid from How to Fight. Lejo knows immediately. This one won't be easy. The girl asks if he's hurt, if he's in pain. What's wrong with him? He answers by charging again with that ugly, unhinged look. She responds with a rising kick straight toward his head, but Lejo uses the spin from her kick to launch his own attack right back at her. Seriously, these teens are straight out of Dragon Ball. She swings again, and Lejo just vanishes like Goku using instant transmission. He's already behind her, dropping into that quadruped style he copied earlier. Against someone who relies on kicks, staying low is way more effective. He moves in again, smooth and fast. She tries to counter with a low kick, but he dodges it effortlessly. She realizes immediately that she's never trained low kicks in her life, and fighting like this is completely throwing her off. The kid who got beaten earlier can't believe what he's seeing. A style that took him 5 years to master. This guy just picked up instantly. He tries telling himself it can't be that good yet, but his teacher's face is beet red, which pretty much confirms it absolutely is. She throws another massive kick. Lejo slips aside and appears behind her again. When she spins around asking where the pest went, she senses danger and fires off a spinning kick, but it only hits the afterimage he left behind. Now he's right in her blind spot, activating Sangyang's style in behemoth mode. The story cuts to explain this. Mu was originally from Earth, but he didn't stay there forever. About 3,000 years before becoming an existence above all others, he ended up on Lucifer's planet. Not by choice. Unlike Earth, that world was overflowing with mana. Everything there evolved into monsters, and Mu grew stronger by fighting them non-stop. Among all the quadrupeds he faced, the strongest was Behemoth. Now he's channeling that authority. The secret is adjusting muscle control to perfectly match the monster's structure. He charges straight in and slams her abdomen with a Behemoth paw strike, launching her through the air. She crashes onto a bench, clutching her stomach in pain, while Lejo rushes forward, fully fired up and ready to finish it. But the streamer girl suddenly steps in and calls the fight. Since the opponent stepped out of the ring, she's disqualified. That means Lejo wins. The crowd thinks the ending is anticlimactic as hell. The girl casually says that's it for today's broadcast and tells him to collect his prize. Then they head into an alley where she drops the truth. To actually claim the reward, he has to beat everyone. Up until now, he hasn't even faced the real challenge. To win the 1 million, there's still one last opponent. Before he can react, she smashes a flying knee straight into his chest. It turns out she's the real final boss, Chung-Hoo from Gdori. And the worst part, Lejo clearly saw the muscle fibers in her leg activate, but because he always waits for the first attack, he let it land. This time, that might have been a terrible choice. She walks past the shredded buff mommy, warning her to be careful next time because they almost lost 1 million, and then leaves. Lejo is left on the ground, writhing in pain, screaming for that witch to come back while still trying to endure it and keep fighting. That's when he tells Yan to grab the orb. Except, where the hell is Yang? The scene cuts to the kid from the classroom fight, the one who got beaten earlier. He's running through the streets with Yang's stuff stuffed into a bag. Even he doesn't fully understand how things ended up like this. It all started with a betting site Guaxiel introduced him to. He just wanted to make a little money. Instead, 5 million vanished. Now he's desperate. He remembers a place where students trade items for collateral. He walks in, slams Yang onto the table, and the guy there asks what kind of creature this is. The kid shows his phone and claims it's a tuatara, an extremely rare animal that only exists in New Zealand, and yeah, it actually looks pretty similar. Another man points out that this one has horns and wings, so it's clearly a mutant. The kid panics and insists collectors would pay a fortune. He says people online are offering hundreds of millions. The man in purple standing in the corner gives a signal, and the deal goes through. In the end, the kid only gets 1 million, but to him that's enough. He's relieved. He can buy time. As he's leaving, someone blocks his path and tosses Daljin's student card onto the table as collateral. He's told to take off his hood. Turns out he was pretending to be Daljin, and the guy immediately notices the photo is heavily edited. Still, the student card alone is worth 500,000. Somehow it still works. He leaves fast, saying he never wants to come back. That place was creepy as hell. This was Grandma's pawn shop. The man in purple spins cards lazily while the blonde asks if it was really okay. Judging by appearances, that kid was never going to pay. The man in purple says it doesn't matter. If they can't pay, they'll just collect. The chapter ends with Eugene panicking. Yang is gone. Lejo thought the little guy must have run back to her, but apparently not. She's running around frantically, searching everywhere, shouting Yang's name, terrified he couldn't have gone far. She bursts into the classroom, yanks open cabinets, and starts tearing through everything while Lejo just stands there confused. A teacher immediately grabs her, demanding to know what she's doing running around another classroom instead of sitting quietly in her seat. She snaps back that she's already checked every single room and Yang isn't in any of them. Lejo calmly tells her that of course he isn't, because he didn't disappear inside the school. She demands to know where it happened, and Lejo pulls out the map. The moment she recognizes it as the one she drew, he confirms that's exactly where Yang vanished. She takes off running instantly, but the teacher chases her down, grabs her by the collar, and forces her back into her chair. Lejo can only watch, completely disappointed. He didn't even get a proper fight, and worse, his body is still absolute trash. A few minor scuffles already pushed him close to his limit, and honestly, that's exactly how he likes it. Fighting while completely worn down forces him to rely on sheer willpower. He stays calm, telling himself all he needs to do is recover, get Yang back, use the orb, and then dive straight back into fighting. The moment class ends, Eugene grabs him and starts dragging him through the hallway. Kangil asks what's going on and why they're running like maniacs. At the same time, Daljin is asking around if anyone's seen her wallet. Out of nowhere, Eugene asks if the two of them are a couple. One look at their faces answers that question instantly. She then asks for help, explaining she lost her little dragon. Could anyone help find it? Someone asks what kind of lizard it is, and Lejo confidently says it's a dragon. It used to be massive, but now it's tiny. The color doesn't exactly make you hungry, but the back is smooth and perfect for flying. He just keeps rambling while the others are already sprinting off. For Lejo, this works out perfectly. While they search for Yang, he can focus on recovering and training. The scene shifts to Yanjo, yet another gambling addict. Seriously, how do people still believe in casinos? The entire system exists to take your money, but somehow people still think they're going to beat it. Yanjo celebrates after a win, tries to withdraw, and surprise, it's locked. 6 days pass. Yang still hasn't been found. Lejo keeps staring intensely at the teacher's muscles, while the girls continue searching, even putting up missing posters. A full week goes by, and Lejo genuinely doesn't care. Eugene apologizes for dragging the other girl into this, but she shrugs it off, saying she doesn't study much anyway. Still, she's now pissed that the owner of the missing pet seems to care the least. She says she's going to grab some drinks and leaves. That's when the blonde shows up and notices Daljun's name. Bad news, the loan was taken out under her name, which means she's the one on the hook. When Eugene comes back, Daljun is gone. Earlier, Lejo had been staring at the teacher's muscles again. The teacher asks what he wants, while Lejo is completely focused on his deltoids, imagining that's how his body should look. He even reaches out and touches the teacher's chest, making the man blush while explaining that he trains a lot. His muscles are rock solid. Flattered, the teacher thinks this kid really understands the world. That's when Lejo decides he wants to train with him. Back in the present, Daljun confronts the man holding her student card, demanding it back. The blonde says that they know it's hers, but she still has to repay the money she borrowed. She insists she's never taken a loan, but the man in the purple hood slams the table, telling her to stop playing dumb. She took the money and now she has to pay. The blonde adds that she even used her card as collateral. The loan was $500,000, and thanks to time passing, it's gone up by another $50,000. Daljun says that's not even that much and promises to pay it back within a week. The card is locked in a drawer, and she's warned not to make them hunt her down again. After she leaves, the blonde mutters that kids these days are all a disgrace. The purple hooded man asks if he's talking about him, and the blonde immediately apologizes. Later, the two argue, lock the room, and leave, hiding the key in the most predictable place imaginable, right in the plant. Daljun sees everything. There's no way she's handing money over to scammers like that. She walks up, spots the key instantly, and opens the door. Inside, she grabs her student card, but hears a noise. When she checks, it's Yang crying for help, right before a shadow looms behind her. It's Yanjo. He covers her mouth and tells her to stay quiet. He recognizes her as the wallet girl and explains he's here for the same reason. They both want their stuff back, so neither of them should make a sound. Later, Daljun walks away through the corridor, muttering that stealing someone's pet is disgusting. Those people were truly awful. What she doesn't realize is that everything was recorded. The next day at school, she calls out to Eugene, who's been worried sick since she disappeared. Daljun apologizes and says she brought something back. Yang pops out of her backpack and Eugene hugs him tight, saying she missed him so much. Yang immediately smells his master and flies straight into Lejo's arms. Unfortunately, Lejo's body is wrecked from training, and the sudden impact sends pain through every muscle. He reflexively throws Yang to the ground before realizing what he's done and apologizing like crazy. Eugene scolds him for mistreating the poor little dragon. Meanwhile, back at Grandma's loan office, they're watching the security footage as Daljun escapes with Yang and Yanjo passes through shortly after. The blonde complains that they lost 2 student IDs and even their lizard collateral. So what are they supposed to do now? The purple-haired guy is obviously furious, itching to beat someone, blaming the blonde for losing the keys. But in the end, they brush it off. The money they lost wasn't even that much. What really mattered was the fact that those kids broke into the office. That was the real problem. Next chapter opens with an innocent little soccer game. Someone fires an absolutely evil shot and nails Lejo square in the face. Blood hits the ground, and the guy just smiles. Naturally, he's about to punch the kid. And yep, he slams him straight in the stomach. While everyone's asking if he's lost his mind, Lejo casually announces that PE class is awesome. Meanwhile, Eugene decides to teach Yang how to use a phone since Lejo doesn't care about communication at all. At least this way they could message him. Yang is completely lost, having no idea what phones, texting, or Wi-Fi even are. She starts explaining, but suddenly Yang spots the guy who kidnapped him earlier walking nearby. Instead of running, Yang lunges and bites the guy's head, screaming that he's the kidnapper. The man panics, grabs Yang and hurls him away, but Yang immediately jumps back into the chase like an angry missile. At the same time, Lejo is getting chewed out by the teacher, who warns him that if he keeps causing trouble, he won't help him train his body anymore. Then some idiot bumps into him. Since the guy struck first, Lejo instantly retaliates, declaring PE class back in session. The teacher stretches his neck out and yells for him to stop. Class finally ends, everyone heads home, and Lejo proudly declares PE the greatest class of all time. He wishes it happened every day. Eugene sighs, knowing he doesn't actually understand what PE is meant for. She asks if he doesn't have training today and whether he'd rather leave Yang with her. While they're talking, Daljun is chatting with a friend and Yoon is on his phone saying he's on his way. That's when Daljun suddenly runs into Yeonjo, beaten up and furious, demanding her student ID card. She asks who he is and he tells her she was caught on camera and better hand it over. Neither girl understands what he's talking about, but Yeonjo warns them that if they don't cooperate, their faces will end up just like his. He reaches into her bag to grab it, but from a distance, guess who's watching? Jun and Steel, and they are not happy. They rush forward immediately. Lejo doesn't fully understand what's happening, but he notices Yeonjo holding Daljun by the neck when they arrive. Yeonjo eats one punch to the face and another to the chest, and then somehow Lejo steps in front of Yeonjo to protect him. He even says Yeonjo challenged him first, so why are they ignoring him? Everyone freezes. Even Yeonjo looks confused. Using the chaos, Yeonjo grabs Daljun by the arm and bolts. Everyone gives chase until they corner him in an alley. Steel recognizes it instantly, same alley as before. Yeonjo throws Daljun to the ground and tells them to come at him now that no one's around. Bold move, especially after already getting wrecked earlier. Lejo steps forward, but Kyun tells him to wait and stop messing around. If Lejo hadn't blocked that earlier attack, none of this would have happened. Lejo doesn't care. If Yeonjo wants a fight, then let's settle it. Yeonjo grabs Lejo's arm, still aching from training. Lejo locks eyes and throws a punch, but Yeonjo dodges, grabs his shoulder, hooks a leg behind him, and slams him into the ground. Lejo is stunned. Hyun rushes in, grabs his sister, and decides the best option is to run. Yeonjo's furious about losing the student card, while Lejo realizes something important lying on the ground. The training worked. When Yeonjo slammed him, it didn't hurt at all. He had contracted his back muscles perfectly. He stands up. Steel asks if he needs help, but Lejo refuses. Yeonjo swings a heavy slap, but Lejo dodges. Still, Yeonjo grabs him and throws him down again. Once more, it doesn't hurt. Then reality hits. It wasn't Lejo taking the impact, it was Yongyong on his back. Yeonjo moves in to stomp Yongyong's head, but Lejo dodges, stands up, and completely loses it. He screams at Yeonjo for what he did to Yongyong. Now it's his turn. Lejo unleashes a brutal barrage of punches. Yeonjo is baffled. Those hits hurt way too much for someone so light, but Lejo keeps going, fired up, shouting that this is revenge. Yeonjo charges in, trying to body check him. Lejo sees it like a massive boulder rushing forward. He braces, expanding the muscles in his legs to stand his ground. He gets pushed back, but he stays standing. Steel offers to step in again. Lejo refuses. The weight difference is still huge, but there are no stones his fist can't crack. He rushes forward, targeting weak points, breaking Yeonjo down piece by piece. He slips under an arm, smashes Yeonjo's ribs, then strikes behind the thigh. Yeonjo turns, but Lejo is already on the other side, hitting both legs again. Yeonjo crouches low, yelling at him to stop fighting like a rat. Then suddenly, Yeonjo shouts for Steel not to interfere. Lejo turns to say the same thing, but freezes. Steel isn't moving, and that's when Yeonjo appears behind Lejo and locks in a chokehold. He's already celebrating, laughing that he caught the rat. Lejo struggles to break free as Steel starts to panic. Lejo almost calls for help, then stops himself. He shouts for Steel not to interfere. Under no circumstances should anyone help him. He wants to deal with everything himself. And in that moment, Lejo finally understands exactly what Yeonjo is trying to do. Yeonjo is crushing the blood vessels in Lejo's neck, cutting off oxygen to the brain. A few more seconds and he'd black out. But stopping it is simple. Lejo contracts his neck muscles, forces space into the hold, and slips his arm underneath. He pours every bit of strength into his forearm, not only breaking the choke, but crushing Yeonjo's arms in the process. The instant Yeonjo feels pain, Lejo snaps his head back with a brutal headbutt and shoves him away. Yeonjo mutters that this bastard really is a psychopath. Lejo watches closely. The unbreakable stone is cracking. That means it's time to strike the center. This is where the training finally pays off. A few days earlier at the gym, the instructor was hyped out of his mind explaining squats, saying leg pumps were the best exercise on earth. Lejo silently watched the muscle activation and immediately agreed. It really was an excellent workout. The moment the instructor stepped away, Lejo went straight for the barbell. The teacher panicked, telling him to wait because that weight was far too heavy and he'd hurt himself. Lejo laughed. To him, the concern was funny. Even as his skinny legs trembled like noodles, he insisted it was fine. The instructor warned him again, but Mu had always been a master of muscle control. Even master wasn't enough to describe it. He could control every muscle fiber, redistribute strength, reinforce weak points, and even shift muscle mass from one area to another. Once he could blow apart a pyramid with raw physical force. The only reason he stopped using this level of control was because once his body surpassed a certain point, the technique became unnecessary. But now, inside Lejo's fragile body, it mattered again. Back in the alley, Lejo shifts all that refined muscle control into his arms. Steel asks if he's okay. In that instant, Lejo remembers the rotating punch he used before. Yanjo tries to defend, but it's already too late. The cracked stone finally shatters. Yanjo collapses unconscious onto the ground. Lejo looks down and smiles. He's beaten him. The first card of Gdori has fallen. On the way home, Yoon asks his sister who that weirdo was and why he'd been following her. She apologizes for not explaining sooner and tells him everything. The wallet, the blondes, the threats, Yanjo, all of it. Shun's rage boils over. He knows those people will never stop using money as an excuse to torment her. He immediately calls the class president and says he won't be coming to school today. The scene cuts to Grandma's rental office. The door bursts open, and before the man in the purple coat can react, he takes a clean hit to the head and gets beaten down. Strangely, the blonde cheers, saying he deserves it. When his friend demands to know what he's doing, the blonde apologizes and says he's making a call. Two gangsters rush in from the next room, but Hyun still hasn't realized that the demon's blood he despises runs through his veins. He charges the first thug. One punch sends the bald guy flying straight into the street. Chaos erupts. Everyone in the room gets demolished. Hyun spits on the fallen men, warning them never to come asking for money again. He never borrowed anything. The man in the purple hood, beaten and bleeding, asks if Hyun even knows who he is. Hyun says he doesn't care. If they bother him again, he'll come back. He steps on the bald guy as he leaves. The man in purple trembles with rage, wondering what to do next. Elsewhere, Lejo walks down the street with Yang sitting on his head, looking weaker by the minute, but still claiming the fight was fun. Steel asks how Lejo made his arms suddenly grow like that. Lejo says it's easy and demonstrates. Steel tries and completely fails. Lejo explains that Steel doesn't know how to communicate with his muscles yet. Every muscle is different and needs to be understood. Only when the heart and muscles speak the same language can true control be achieved. Steel struggles and gets nowhere, while Yang tells Lejo to stop teaching dangerous techniques. Lejo disagrees. The stronger Steel becomes, the better it is for him. The only way to grow stronger is to fight stronger opponents, and he still has to defeat Lucifer. Yang tells him to relax. Lucifer can't invade Earth because of the barrier, but Lejo says they don't have much time. Sooner or later, that barrier will collapse, and when it does, Lucifer will come to Earth and show what he's capable of. From now on, it's nothing but training. The scene shifts back to the man in the purple coat explaining the situation to another gangster. He says he'll raise interest rates and recover everything. No need to worry. The man in glasses tells him to calm down. Losses happen. This was just experience. He hugs him and says he'll take care of things. That man is Chwazi Sangul. Later, everyone who had been in that room is completely broken. The man with the bat asks how they got beaten by a high school kid. He points the bat at the blonde's face, orders him to open his mouth, drops something onto his tongue, and tells him to leave. Inside the elevator, Sangul remarks that the substance works well. The real problem wasn't the drug, it was that their targets were students. There's no profit in squeezing kids. The older man tells him to stop worrying and come take a look. In front of them is an octagon, packed tight with a screaming crowd. The hooded kid asks what this is, and the man explains it's a game he controls. He tells him to watch that boy fight. Down there is the same blonde as before, now radiating steam, muscles swollen to an unnatural degree. The hooded kid wonders if he's always been like that. He doesn't even get an answer before the fight begins. The blonde charges in, grabs his opponent's arm, slams it down, snaps it clean, then cracks him across the face. The guy is having the time of his life, laughing and shouting that his power keeps growing. He can't even believe this is really him. Stangl casually holds up a pill and explains that's the effect of just one. With it, he decides who wins and who loses. The hooded kid stares in silence, thinking that with something like this, he could finally crush that one person. Meanwhile, Lejo is grinding non-stop at the gym. The kid has turned into a solid ball of muscle. He tells the instructor that if training makes your thighs burn like this, then it's incredible. The instructor stares at his arms and legs and admits he's never seen anyone improve this fast. He asks if Lejo's been using something. Lejo says it's because because he's weak. The instructor misunderstands, thinking he's admitting to using substances, and immediately warns him to stop, saying it's dangerous. Lejo shakes his head. He's weak, way too weak. If he's gonna fight that person, he's nowhere near ready yet. Someone jokes that they should give the little lizard a bath and bring him some bugs to eat. The poor thing has been working non-stop without complaining, and sure enough, the next scene shows Yang sprawled across Lejo's back, completely intact, foam on his chest. He says he got a call and sticks himself to Lejo's head so the foam stays pressed to his ear. It's Eugene, yelling about why Yang hasn't shown up at her house all week. She wants to know where he is. Meanwhile, Lejo, now a full-on muscle mutant, says he's heading out to test his training. And right on cue, waiting in an alley, is that sly girl from before. She says today's results were good. Then he shows up, smiling, saying he's happy to see them both. She says he misunderstood the message. She wants more, and immediately slams a knee straight into his chest. She's excited, saying it landed clean, but Lejo barely staggers. He just smiles. At the moment of impact, he shifted the muscles in his chest over the bone to shield himself. The kick wasn't critical at all. He pushes forward now, fully bulked up, totally juiced. This time the tables have turned. He even has the weight advantage. He fires a heavy kick that sends her flying sideways, but the feisty girl clamps onto his leg, refusing to lose just because she's smaller, and smashes an elbow into his knee. Lejo hesitates. She points out that he's gotten tougher, which just means she has to go all out. While he's glancing down at his leg, she rushes in and unloads a barrage of elbows into his chin. She swings for his ribs next, but suddenly realizes none of her attacks are landing right. Then she notices her leg is stuck. He's trapped it with his muscles. Lejo counters her technique, grabs her, and slams her into the ground. He goes in to stomp her head, but she vanishes. Instantly, he drains the muscle from his upper body, shifts everything into his legs, and leaps. Mid-air, he switches again, pumping everything back into his upper body, then crashes into her with a full body check. The abs mommy asks if she's okay, wondering if this kid might actually outrank Yanjo. She decides to join in and launches a kick, but Lejo has already adapted to her height. He stomps down to close the distance and drives straight for her face. It looks like it's about to land until Chunu cuts in and cracks him with an elbow to the face. Even then, Lejo keeps smiling, reaching for her face, only for the other girl to stomp down on his head. The two of them unleash a brutal barrage while poor Yang is caught in the middle, getting wrecked for absolutely no reason. Lejo is thrilled. The training was worth it. His old self wouldn't have lasted this long. The only issue now is how to beat one without the other interfering. Yang mutters that the two of them are unfair bastards. That's when Lejo says he has an idea to extend his attack range. Before Yang can even respond, Lejo grabs him by the tail and charges forward, declaring it's now 2 versus 2. The girls freeze as Lejo swings Yang like a weapon, smacking both of them clean in the face. But Chunu lands a punch on his hand and rips Yang free, sending the little guy flying while Lejo takes the hits. Still, he powers through, snatches Yang again, and swings him back into the fight, but Chunu realizes using a weapon only creates openings. All she has to do is close the distance. She nails him with a clean shot to the jaw. Yang spins away, but Lejo had already tightened the muscles in his neck. She launches a dragon kick, but Lejo slams her with a headbutt, sending her crashing down. Strengthening the neck is perfect here, absorbing impact while delivering one back. While Yang blocks the abs mommy, she rips herself free and charges. A brutal kick slams into Lejo's ribs, but he had already shifted his muscles, caught her leg, and copied her own technique, driving an elbow straight into her knee. She flips up and fires a spinning kick mid-air. Lejo catches her other leg. Normally, he prefers punching, but this time he goes old school. He locks in an ancient Egyptian leg hold, twisting her body into a knot. She screams as her muscles burn, begging him to stop and surrendering. Lejo says it's time to leave a mark. She suddenly spins and cracks him across the face with a kick. He demands to know what that was about. She said she was done, so why does she still have so much energy? He rushes again. She unloads a fast combo, tells him to take it, and vanishes. When he looks behind him, he realizes he's standing there with the money in hand and Yan lying unconscious on the ground. He calmly puts her cap on his own head and mutters that next time, he'll make sure to leave a bite mark. Not far away, AB's mommy is sprinting through the streets with Chungu in her arms, screaming for her to wake up. Honestly, I wish this woman had an actual name so I could stop calling her mommy. But since the story never gives us one, this is what we're stuck with. The scene shifts to Yanjo stomping through the city, rage boiling over, his ear wrapped in thick bandages. Nothing has gone right lately. Those damn kids at school ruined every single plan he had. He kicks a rock down the street when a voice suddenly asks why his face looks like that. It's the purple-haired guy, Quack Diggin, asking who's been beating him up. Yanjo snaps back, telling him to back off unless he wants to be the next punching bag, and grabs him by the collar. That's when the hooded kid swallows one of those pills. His body swells instantly, skin stretching as purple muscle explodes outward. Yanjo doesn't even get time to react before he's blasted straight into a wall, teeth flying everywhere. The next day, the two girls are walking through the city, one missing her cap, the other sporting a massive lump on her head. And of course, they run into that bastard again. They demand to know what Dijin is doing there. Without hesitation, he swallows another pill, bulks up, and sneers, saying the two of them are seriously unlucky. His chest swells, his body radiating a violent aura. He casually explains that the first side effect is personality changes, specifically becoming violently aggressive. Chungu asks why his body keeps expanding, and he answers that things are already settled with Yanjo. Once he finishes off the two of them, there won't be any Gdori left in the city. He'll be the top dog. He charges at her, and although she's confused, she manages to dodge left and right before snapping a whip-like strike across his head. It's a bee's mommy, but it doesn't even faze him. Shanvu rushes in and slams her elbow straight into his skull, but all it does is send pain screaming back through her arm. Both girls freeze in shock. Hitting him felt like striking solid steel. His body had gone far beyond what a human should be able to withstand. He grabs her leg and delivers a brutal kick that shatters bone. Chungu curses him and tries to punch, but nothing works. He grabs her head, tells her to stop because it only tickles, then smashes her into the ground. Just like that, another one down, crushed in the exact same way. Dijian laughs, calling it pathetic. This level of God is way too low for him. He walks off, declaring that everything from now on will be easy to handle. So now it's clear, this guy must be that kid from the Protagonist class. Or maybe not. Either way, he ends up face to face with the purple hooded man, who asks if he enjoyed the performance. Dijian grins and says yes, this stuff is driving him insane. He feels unstoppable, like he can't possibly lose to anyone. The hooded man reminds him that now that he's wiped out the Gdori members, it's time to wrap up the job he asked for. Dijian says it's no problem, he'll crush whoever he wants. Then he asks why the hooded man doesn't just take the pills himself and finish everyone off. That's when the truth comes out. Sangal had warned him before. The stronger someone becomes, the worse the side effects. First, your personality turns violent, and if everything kicks in at once, your body literally explodes. The hooded man says he's on medication right now, so he can't take them. Meanwhile, Lejo is casually walking through the city with Yang, searching for something. Turns out, they're hunting down the remaining Gdori members. Later, back in class, he asks Eugene where the school of the girls he fought before is. She doesn't really care about that, she's too busy admiring Yang. But after he insists, she finally draws him a map. Now he's on his way, cap on his head, Yang riding on his back. When he arrives, a bee's mommy is limping on crutches, her leg completely broken. They come face to face and she immediately notices her cap on his head. The scene cuts to the hospital, where Lejo asks what happened to the attacker, correcting himself when they refer to her as a boy. She explains they were ambushed and beaten badly. Obviously, it wasn't him, even if he's also a psychopath. She called the police, but no one showed up at the school, and no one has been able to track down the attacker. His name is Dijin. Then Lejo hears someone groaning behind a curtain. He pulls it aside and finds Yanjo completely wrecked, twisted and broken, barely able to speak. Yanjo says it was Dijin who did this to him. He mutters that he hates them all, but explains anyway. The guy attacked him, swallowed a drug, and suddenly became unbelievably strong. Yanjo admits he used to be the weakest member of Gdori, but in that moment, Dijin became the strongest opponent he had ever faced. Lejo always thought Yanjo was insanely strong. He never imagined the guy wouldn't even stand a chance. That means no matter what, he'll have to fight this person. He demands to know where Dijin is. Mommy says even the police can't track him, but Lejo shrugs. That's fine, he'll find him himself. Back at school, Lejo is stuck carrying boxes. The teacher tells him the trick is to turn your entire life into training so you're always improving. Lejo carries the load, but his mind is elsewhere. How exactly is he supposed to track down Dijin? While he's thinking, someone slips past behind him, phone pressed to their ear, whispering that they're looking for him. The voice on the call warns him to move somewhere safe, but Lejo replies that there's no way. He's settling this right here and now. He storms into the classroom. He's looking for Hyun. Suddenly, the door explodes off its hinges. With pills already swallowed, Dijian smashes his way inside and roars that today, someone dies. He grabs desks and chairs, hurling them through the room, one smashing straight through the window. Before Hyun can even ask what's going on, Dijian charges and slams him into the lockers with a crushing blow. It's already clear, Hyun is in serious trouble. He dodges another strike, but Dijian's hand punches straight into the metal wall like it's paper. Hyun snaps back that this is self-defense and lands a punch straight to Dijian's face. Shockingly, it actually seems to do something. He follows with a barrage. Chest, face, stomach, over and over, but Dijian barely reacts. Hyun hits him again, harder this time, but it still isn't enough. Dijian crushes his entire hand in one grip. The entire class freezes, staring in horror, wondering just who the hell this monster really is. At the door, Steel and Dalgan burst in, demanding to know what the hell is going on. That's when Dalgan realizes the truth. The lunatic tearing the place apart is her brother. She panics and hurls a sandal straight at his back, screaming at him to get out. He doesn't even turn around. Instead, he raises his arm, ready to smash her head in. Steel steps in instantly, punches him square in the face, and demands to know what Dijian thinks he's doing. At the same time, Hun crashes in from above with a knee and follows up with an elbow straight onto Dijian's arm. For a moment, the pressure works. Hun breaks free, furious that this bastard tried to lay hands on Dalgan. The two of them attack from opposite sides, striking fast and clean. Downstairs, the teacher and the protagonist hear the chaos erupting and freeze. Students rush past, hyped out of their minds like it's a live fight. The teacher bolts, shouting that he can't allow this. The protagonist drops the boxes and says he's going too, but Yang pokes his head out of the backpack and tells him to wait. He can feel mana up there. Back in the classroom, Steel slips under Dijian's arm and lands a clean uppercut to the chin. He ducks again, confused. This guy's absurdly strong, but his attacks are sloppy and crude. Dijian snaps, curses, and reaches out, but Hun sweeps behind his knee, dumping him to the floor. As he turns, a sharp jab smashes straight between his eyes. No matter how tough a body gets, weak points still exist, and the two of them start hammering him non-stop. Dijian roars, shoves them both away, glances at the door, and bolts. He plows through everyone in his path and storms up to a bald guy in the back, screaming for another pill. The bald man hesitates, confused, until Dijian snarls that this is exactly why he's here, and that's when it hits. This bald guy is the purple-hooded bastard from before. The bald man shoves the pill into Dijian's hand and tells him to finish it. Dijian bites down instantly. Hun charges, but it's obvious what's about to happen. He gets smashed straight into the wall. Steel follows, thrown aside like trash. Dalgan rushes forward, calling out to her brother, but Dijian grabs her by the head. That's when the teacher steps in, yelling that even if a student trains hard, that doesn't give him the right to beat his classmates. He tries to assert authority with brute strength and fails immediately, retreating in panic. Then the protagonist arrives at the doorway. Yang warns him again. Mana is pouring off this guy. The bald man lunges for the little dragon, realizing that's the collateral he lost, but slips on the sandal still lying on the floor and faceplants directly into the protagonist. Lejo doesn't say a word. He grabs him by the head and crushes him with a single elbow. The bald man drops unconscious. Dijian's partner charges next, confident. The punch lands on Lejo's chest and fizzles out completely. Yang had drained the mana mid-strike. The force is gone. Lejo answers with one clean punch to the face. A few seconds later, the guy is a broken heap on the floor. Lejo looks down and says he was way too weak. He tells Yang to return the mana. He'll need it for training. The little dragon obeys but warns him, this mana isn't normal. It's absurdly pure. That kind of energy shouldn't exist on Earth. Lejo knows exactly why. Mana like this only comes directly from a god. He slowly turns to Yang and asks if it was him. The little dragon turns bright red, and right then, Dijian stands back up. The next chapter jumps 1,000 years into the past. In the divine realm, Mu charges the Cyclops god. One punch shatters the monster's mace and arm. The Cyclops shrinks, begging for mercy. Mu tells him he'll stop when he's entertained and leaves, promising to come back stronger next time. Back with Yang, he complains the fight was boring and comes up with an idea. He crushes a stone, condenses his own mana into it, and forms a tiny orb. He explains that if Mu feeds feeds this to his enemy before a fight, things get way more fun. Mu grabs a chunk, ignores the warning, runs off, and immediately comes sprinting back, beaten half to death. The transformed Cyclops appears and the real brawl begins. Back in the present, Digian charges again. Lejo dodges, focuses his muscles, and lands a punch straight into his chest, only to realize how terrifyingly tough he is. Digian slams the ground. The entire school shakes. Students are thrown into the air. Even Lejo is grabbed mid-flight, slammed into a wall, clothes shredded. This time it hurts. Lejo asks how long this power will last. Yang says maybe 5 minutes. That's all. Lejo exhales slowly. 5 minutes is more than enough because running away isn't an option. Opportunities like this don't come twice. This, for real, is the biggest problem of them all. The goal isn't to run away from the fight, but to land a ton of likes on this video that helps Meowie make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell and see ya.